In the southern city of Kherson, at least 2 people have been killed today. A Russian drone hitting a minibus, 7 injured. Details still coming through from local officials. Separately, along Ukraine's northern border with Belarus, President Zelensky saying military analysts are recording, quote, rather unusual activity in the past 24 hours. He's not gone into details. He's said in a post as well on Telegram today. The activity seen on that side of the border means that Ukraine will act if matters escalate. Meanwhile, Russian troops are reported to be inching towards the city of Konstantinivka, which is in the eastern Donetsk region, trying to establish a foothold for some time there. This is according to a top military official of Ukraine today. Now, Konstantinivka, with several other cities, 3 cities in fact, is part of the so-called fortress belt in the east, fortified by Ukraine's military. Let's get a wider look at what's going on. Let's bring in Olena Kryzhanivska, a Ukrainian defence analyst, specialises in drones and unmanned systems and military technology too. She is the founder of Ukraine's Arms Monitor publication, which tracks arms transfers and publishes dedicated Ukraine drone brief as well. Olena's in Toronto. Welcome to France 24, Olena. Great to speak to you tonight. Let's begin. Let's talk first about something that I've seen you've looked into and you've written about this week, which is fascinating. This is something that appears to be now on the battlefield, so-called Martian drones used by Ukraine, reportedly worrying Russian troops, and there's a lot of mystery around them. What are they?
Well, there are a lot of developments on the Ukrainian side that are not publicly disclosed. And when we are talking about Martian drones, we are referring mostly to Russian reports from Telegram channels, reports from Russian media, and this type of reporting appears on different directions, on Zaporizhia direction, on the southeast of Ukraine, in Donetsk direction. So Russians are very alarmed because Ukraine reportedly started using these drones, fixed-wing kamikaze drones. They are flying at very low altitudes and they are silent, so they do not produce a lot of sound. That's why it's harder to detect them. And Russians are worried because these drones allegedly are using artificial intelligence, or at least elements of that, and they have high destructive power. So actually, they managed to inflict a lot of damage. However, there are no confirmed reports from Ukrainian side about the use of these drones. Russians are also allegedly claiming that these drones might be produced with the help of Western companies, Western governments, but there are no confirmed reports. First of all, Ukraine hasn't released anything about these drones, and my own sources cannot confirm or deny these claims. And I guess we will need to wait and see on how the developments are unfolding.
And the alarm about this from the Russian side, I think I've read within your reporting and your sourcing, suggestions that within the AI ability, that it kind of takes away autonomized it to an extent. There's less human input than there was before. And again, just try to understand the veracity of this. Is there a pattern when you're looking at drone warfare, the technological improvements? Is it often coming from the Russian side where you're trying to work out how Ukraine's technology is improving? You know, is this par for the course? Have you seen this before, from Russia saying this first and you discover it later on that it's true or not?
Well, yes, AI-enabled technologies are widely used by both Ukraine and Russia. And something that is used by Russia are neural networks. We saw these technologies used in Kharkiv region, for example. But the thing is that the extent to which these technologies are being integrated is not something that we really expect. It doesn't seem like a sci-fi movie yet. So there is no full autonomy on the battlefield. Russians also tend to use a lot of this information. We know it as a matter of fact. So they tend to overestimate their own military capabilities. They describe everything in much better picture than it is in reality. But at the same time, we see that Russian systems, they are full of innovations, but they also fail quite often. So they do not actually correspond to the claimed capabilities. So there is a lot of I would say, combat happening in the informational space as well. It's very important to keep track of different reports and check the verified information. There are different OSINT reports, independent ones, independent analysts that are tracking and checking these developments. So we always need to put this in larger context.
This is very good to know, because you scroll your socials, this is something that you see, and actually to look at the moment, I think we can say these are still reports that they're being used, that you haven't seen solid evidence of that yet. Now, just give us an idea of what used to be called the front lines and what it looks like, the so-called killing zone now, the weaponry that's dominating, the types of drones you are noticing in terms of the cadence, the rhythm of this war.
Yeah, the front line, the kill zone, is something that extends actually from 10 to 15 kilometers, sometimes to 20 kilometers, and in different directions of the front line. It's different because the intensity of combat also differs. The capabilities deployed by Russia and Ukraine also vary across different directions. So, but when we are talking about the kill zone, we mean this range from 10 to 15 kilometers, where everything that is going to be detected within this range is going to be targeted and most likely destroyed. We are talking about military personnel, vehicles, ground robots. So both sides are increasingly using their unmanned technologies, aerial drones that are monitoring the kill zone from the air. We have Mavic drones, we have FPV drones, also used on different ranges. But also we have unmanned ground drones, something extensively used, particularly by Ukraine, because Ukraine has shortage of military personnel. And one of the current goals for Ukrainian commanders is to replace infantrymen with ground robots, save lives of personnel, but also delegate to robots a lot of tasks that can be conducted on a battlefield without risking people's lives.
Which takes us to something that happened this week, and I'd like your thoughts on this. Let's just take a look. This is unmanned technology used for a rescue operation. This is what happened on Wednesday. This is Limanska in Odesa Oblast. An elderly lady, this is 77-year-old Antonina Horutsna. She was rescued by drone operators from the 3rd Army Corps. There's a note attached to the vehicle saying, "Granny, get in." There's no sound here, but this is what happened. Olena, because this vehicle then moves for about 2 to 3 hours to safety. What do you make of that? And we're starting to see more of this, aren't we? The rescue operations in the middle of the killing zone.
Exactly. What we saw in this video is the mission by the 3rd Army Corps, which is one of the pioneers in the use of unmanned ground robots. And the mission was to evacuate the elderly woman from the rear, from the next to frontline area. I believe the mission was successful. It's very popular. So what we see is that, well, actually, it's very dangerous, obviously, for civilians to be to continue living in that zone. And the woman was living there for all these years of very intensive fighting. And finally, she decided to evacuate, but she wouldn't be able to do that without the help of this robot. Currently, medical evacuation and also logistical tasks are the main purposes of the use of ground robots in Ukraine, and Ukrainian commanders want to delegate 100% of those missions to ground robots. But also they are being increasingly used in the strike operations as well. We saw that they captured several Russian positions. The Russian soldiers laid down weapons in front of ground drones. So all these developments are real and happening on a battlefield already.
You talk about FPV drones, first-person drone view drones. We talk about, and we have over the weeks, the fishing nets that are starting to appear in some of the cities to try to defend against the drones, and some sent by French fishermen as well, some basic measures to try to stop rapidly advancing technology. But what we're starting to see being exported as well is not the FPV drones, but the fiber optic drones, particularly being used more and more in the past month, reportedly by Hezbollah in Lebanon. Tell us about what you're seeing in terms of the balance. The fiber optic drones, how they're working, how to understand, basically, am I right to say the way they work is you can get past the blocking techniques of technologies and they can travel a great distance?
FPV fiber optic drones are very similar by their technology, by their construction to usual FPV drones. They are the same, with only one difference. The control is being done through the fiber optic cable. So it's a physical cable attached to the drone. These drones cannot reach very remote areas. So the distances they can travel are very limited. 25 kilometers, 30 kilometers. Well, there was actually the Russian case, the Russian report of a fiber optic drone reaching 50 kilometers range, but these are rare. So the range is rather limited. Yes, their main advantage is that they cannot be jammed. They cannot be countered by electronic warfare measures. So they need to be disabled physically, rather by shooting them from firearms, or by cutting their fiber optic cable. And that's actually a big problem on Ukraine's battlefield, because Russia was able to field thousands of these systems last year. Russia has the production of fiber optic cable. Russia imports a lot of fiber optic cable from China. And that's why that's one of the largest challenges on Ukraine's battlefield, because there is no countermeasure that would address this type of threats on a mass scale. So you need to deal with them one by one.
Yeah, it's incredible to hear, actually, when it comes down to the techniques you can use to defend against them, as you said, literally shooting them down. In brief time we have, before the headlines are upon us, 30 seconds or so, do you sense that Russia and Ukraine are on a par with their defense technology drone abilities right now, or is one ahead of the other?
It is difficult to say. They both have different advantages and different weaknesses. For example, Ukraine is very innovative. So the scale of innovation, the speed of iteration is unbelievable. Just 1 month is a typical time when a system becomes obsolete in Ukraine. So you need to iterate very fast, both hardware and software. But at the same time, Russia leads in its ability to scale. So Russia picks the most productive technology, for example, Shahed loitering munitions, and then produces this type of systems in large quantities. The same is happening with fiber optic drones, as we discussed.
Really
so
good
then
to
for
talk to you.
Ukraine, it is very...
The headlines are approaching ever nearer, but Olena, we will talk again, no doubt, because this technology is advancing fast. Thank you for your time tonight. Olena Kryzhanivska, Ukraine defense analyst, specialist in drones, unmanned systems, and founder of Ukraine's Arms Monitor publication. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment on France 24.